Hi, I'm Delphine, and this story starts with a heater. Just a heater I bought with my own pension because winter in Plano isn't gentle when you live alone. But to my son and his wife, it was a betrayal. While she unboxed a brand new Tesla in their driveway, they called me irresponsible and slowly erased me from everything. My room, my name, even my seat at the table. How do you go from raising a child to needing a holiday access pass to visit him? How did I become the outsider in a family I helped build? And what happened when I finally said, no more? The air in Plano had that winter stillness, dry and biting, even inside my small duplex. I had an old quilt from my mother, a portable heater with a busted dial, and layers of sweaters that made movement feel like a chore. Still, the cold crept in like something uninvited and stayed where the warmth used to live. So I ordered a new heater, nothing fancy, just one that worked. I paid for it out of my pension account, no one's money but mine. A quiet decision, wrapped in practicality. I didn't need anyone's permission to be warm. Or so I thought. The day it arrived, I unpacked it like it was some secret contraband, set it by my chair, plugged it in, and let the low hum fill the room. That sound meant comfort. It reminded me I was still allowed to take up space, still human. The next morning, Marlon stopped by unannounced, said he was just checking in. He barely looked at me before spotting the heater by the armchair. His eyes narrowed. "Mom, did you buy that?" His voice was sharp, clipped. I nodded. "Yes, the old one was useless." "You used your pension for that?" I blinked. "Of course I did." He let out that long, exhausted sigh I'd heard since he was a teenager. "Electricity's expensive, you know. You should have asked me first." "I didn't realize I needed your approval to stay warm in my own house." He stared at me like I was the unreasonable one. "You never think about long-term consequences, do you?" That's when I stopped answering. Not because I didn't have words, but because I didn't want to waste them. He left shortly after, muttering something about budgeting apps and responsibility. I turned the heater back on, let it speak for me. The very next day, a bright white Tesla rolled into their driveway. I watched from my window as Seraphine posed next to it like it was an award, not a car. She tossed her sleek hair back and held her phone out for the perfect shot. Her Instagram caption later read, "When hard work pays off." Hard work. Marlon beamed beside her like he'd married into royalty. He clapped her on the back like she'd just landed on the moon. "Smart move," he told her, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Good for the environment, future-focused." The heater in my living room, still humming, suddenly sounded louder in my ears. I stared at it, then back at that car worth more than everything I owned. They praised her for buying status, judged me for buying survival. That Friday, we had dinner at their place, one of those family check-ins that felt more like performance reviews. Seraphine served some kind of quinoa kale fusion, proudly announcing it was 0 emissions from pan to plate. The conversation turned to climate change. She mentioned how outdated heating systems were part of the problem. "We have to move away from wasteful habits," she said, glancing at me with a smile too polished to be real. Marlon smirked. "Some folks still think space heaters are efficient." I sipped my water. Didn't say a word. Not because I couldn't, but because I knew they wouldn't hear me anyway. Later that night, I sat in my recliner, wrapped in silence. The heater buzzed beside me. I held the remote, not for warmth, but to feel some kind of control. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, wondering when exactly I'd become the burden. When did my choices start needing approval? When did staying warm become a sign of irresponsibility? There was a time I would have spoken up, demanded to be seen, to be heard. But now I was learning something new. Silence speaks too. I looked out the window at the dark outline of their Tesla, parked like a monument to something I didn't believe in. "I gave them warmth for years," I whispered to no one. Maybe I shouldn't have made it so easy. I used to walk this path to buy birthday cakes. Now, I walk it to disappear. That thought looped in my mind as I stared out the window of my duplex the following week. The heater still hummed near my feet, but the warmth it offered couldn't touch the cold that had settled in my chest. Something had shifted, not suddenly, not violently, but deeply. Marlon and Seraphine stopped lingering in the kitchen after dinner. No more idle conversations or glances that acknowledged I was there. Seraphine had moved my teacup, my green porcelain one with the chip near the handle, from its usual spot near the coffee maker. It now sat in a cabinet behind the blender, next to the Christmas mugs. Subtle, effective. Even my seat at the table changed. No one said anything. But one evening, I walked in and saw the placemat I always used replaced by one that didn't match. I sat somewhere else. When a house stops feeling like home, it doesn't scream. It whispers. One rainy evening, Seraphine brewed chamomile and asked if I'd sit with her for a minute. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. Marlon joined us a few minutes later. He didn't make eye contact, just cleared his throat and said, "Mom, we've been thinking." That phrase never bodes well when it comes from adult children. "We thought maybe you'd enjoy something quieter, something more your speed," he said carefully. Seraphine added, "There's this new senior complex. They have classes, social groups, a wellness center, and it's really cozy, not like a facility, just a little apartment, very peaceful." I kept my face still. "We'll help with rent, of course," Marlon offered, almost like he expected a thank you. I stared at my mug, watching the steam swirl above the surface. I nodded once. "I'll think about it," I said calmly. But I already knew. I didn't need time to decide. The decision had been made for me long ago, when they stopped looking me in the eye, when they moved my cup, when I stopped being asked anything and started being informed. That night, after they went to bed, I opened my closet, pulled out my navy suitcase, the one I'd used when we buried their father. I laid it on the bed and unzipped it slowly. Folding sweaters wasn't new, but that night, it felt like I was folding pieces of a life that no longer belonged here. I touched each hem longer than necessary, smoothed down wrinkles like they mattered. There's a difference between leaving and being let go. I wasn't walking out. I was being removed. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, suitcase half filled beside me. Not crying, not angry, just tired. Tired of defending my place in a home I helped build. I called Eunice the next morning. Her voice answered on the second ring, warm as ever. "You okay?" "I think I need a new zip code," I said. She was quiet for a beat. "You let me know if you need a place to land." That hit harder than any speech. Not just the offer, but the fact that she didn't ask what happened. She already knew. A few days later, I packed the rest. Books, medication, 2 photo frames. Left everything else. The things they'd remember me by. If they ever wanted to. It was still dark when I left. I didn't want fanfare. Didn't want guilt tripped onto me as I wheeled my life down the driveway. I left a note on the kitchen counter, tucked under the salt shaker. "Thank you for the time. Take care." The walk to the car was the same path I once took to grab birthday cakes, groceries, flowers on Father's Day. Now I walked it alone, and not a single window lit up to stop me. The next week, I opened my phone and saw a version of our family that didn't include me. Smiling faces, matching pajamas, a caption that read, "Grateful for our little unit." They were seated around the table I helped pay for, in a house I used to help clean on weekends, even after my arthritis got worse. There wasn't a single picture of me. A few days later, I stopped by to drop off a birthday gift for my grandson. I rang the bell, not because I had to, but because the key I once carried had been quietly removed from my purse months ago, when Seraphine insisted on a smart lock system and never sent me the new code. Seraphine answered the door with a tight-lipped smile. "Oh, didn't expect you." I held up the gift bag. "Just dropping this off. Thought he might like a real book." She paused for half a second too long before stepping aside. "He's at soccer practice." Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and floor polish. The house looked the same, yet unfamiliar. I followed the scent of candles toward the hallway. Marlon appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Mom, hey, you didn't have to come all the way out." "It's not that far," I said, setting the bag on the counter. He hesitated. "By the way, we repurposed your room. Hope you don't mind." I said nothing, just nodded and walked toward the hallway, heart heavy but feet steady. When I opened the door, I didn't find my quilt. No sign of the old rocking chair where I once nursed him to sleep. Instead, there were racks of clothes with shiny tags, ring lights standing like tripods, boxes labeled Seasonal Q4 Influencer Campaign. Not a trace of me. I stepped further inside, the smell of lavender sachets replaced by the sharp scent of plastic packaging. A portable steamer hissed quietly from a corner. I wasn't angry at the boxes. I was broken by the silence where my life used to be. I returned to the kitchen. Neither Marlon nor Seraphine met my eyes. "I'll get going," I said softly. They nodded. I didn't ask if the boy got my gift. I didn't ask anything. 2 days later, it was my birthday. I didn't expect much, but I also didn't expect what I got. An email, no phone call, no card in the mailbox, just a notification. "You've received a digital gift card." The message said, "Happy birthday, treat yourself, love, M&S." No amount listed, just a clickable link, just silence wrapped in pretend celebration. I stared at it for a long time, unsure how to even redeem it. I'd never ordered anything online with a digital gift card. There was no note, no voice, no picture of my grandson holding a drawing with my name in crayon. Just click to shop, click to forget. I didn't cry. That part of me had gone dry long ago. Later that afternoon, I walked to the park near my building. It was filled with the kind of families you see in brochures. Older mothers being helped onto benches by adult children, toddlers running ahead with sticky hands. Laughter that didn't require effort. Casual touch that didn't need permission. I watched them without envy. Just observation. Had I become disposable once I stopped being useful? Was I now an obligation they were relieved to outsource? There, on that park bench, I realized something I should have seen sooner. I wasn't forgotten. I was being edited. That night, I sat down with my journal. Not a place for poetry, just proof that I still existed. They've repurposed my room, my role, my warmth. But they don't know. I still carry my name, and one day, they'll hear it again. I decided it was time they heard a piece of that story, from the woman they no longer pictured. It started with a Facebook post. Not mine, theirs. A weekend BBQ, sun shining on smiling faces. Marlon at the grill, Seraphine laughing with a glass of rosé, my grandson on a tiny picnic chair covered in dinosaur stickers. Everyone in frame, perfectly curated. The caption read, "All the people who matter most." I wasn't in any of the pictures. I wasn't at the BBQ. I hadn't even known it happened. Last week, I had left a simple comment on one of Seraphine's family posts. Just a heart and a "miss you all." Not demanding, just present. Now that comment was gone, not hidden, deleted. They didn't block me. They erased me. A few days later, I received a group text, short, formal. "Hey, Grandma's welcome to swing by for Ethan's birthday party this weekend." It was Ethan's 7th. I remembered his first vividly. I baked the cupcakes that day, vanilla with blue sprinkles. He'd cried when the frosting touched his nose. This time, I brought a wrapped gift and stayed quiet. Didn't bring cupcakes, didn't bring my old camera. Just my presence. Barely that. The party was in their newly renovated backyard. Lights strung overhead, themed decorations, rented cotton candy machine. Kids screamed joyfully, unaware of anything but sugar and balloons. When it came time for cake, chairs were rearranged, plates passed out. A cousin, one I barely knew, gestured toward a folding chair near a plastic kiddie table. "Here's good, right?" she said, already turning away. I sat, not because I wanted to, but because there was no place else to go. The main table was full of adults sipping wine, laughing about market trends and vacation packages. My name wasn't on a place card, but a centerpiece sat where my seat once had been. Seraphine passed by, smiling with a voice so sweet it tasted fake. "We're short on seats. Hope you don't mind over here." "Not at all," I replied, voice steady. From the kiddie table, I watched Marlon help Ethan blow out candles. Watched Seraphine pose beside the cake for pictures. My camera stayed in my purse. No one asked me to stand next to Ethan. No one asked if I wanted a photo. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I simply took it all in. Every detail filed away like pictures in an album I no longer belonged to. I raised a boy who became a man. But that man had no memory of the lap he once clung to. Later that night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook. I scrolled past the posts. I saw the tags that didn't include me. I saw comments from strangers praising the beautiful family. I closed the tab. Then I reached for the photo albums I kept on my bookshelf, the ones with real pages and fingerprints and corners worn by time. I didn't delete a thing. I held each photo like a memory still alive. Their tiny hands, their Halloween costumes, Marlon's graduation, my late husband's smile when he thought no one was looking. They had cut me out, but I still held the negatives. I took out my journal, placed it beside me, and wrote only one line. They took the seat, but I still own the story. I clicked off the lamp. If not, they'll come looking for me, and by then, I might be gone. That thought carried me like a quiet current through the final weeks of fall. It was the season when families gathered, when kitchens should have smelled like cinnamon and turkey, not silence. But silence was all I heard now. I suggested we hold the memorial for Charles's father, my late husband's dad. I'd hosted it for 25 years. We did it every November, always at our home. There was a rhythm to it. I'd make his favorite cornbread, set out the old black and white photos, and say a quiet prayer. This year, I offered out of habit more than hope. Marlon didn't even look up from his phone. Seraphine already handled it. She booked a caterer. They're doing a fusion thing. Fusion. No one had asked about the date, or the menu, or the man being remembered. They remembered the event. They forgot the soul behind it. A few days later, I started cooking stew in the kitchen, the same one I'd made for Marlon when he had his wisdom teeth pulled. He used to call it Mom's warm bowl. The meat was simmering, onions caramelizing. I was humming something low, stirring slowly. Seraphine walked in, balancing her tablet and a smoothie. "Oh," she said, spotting the pot. "I just ordered Thai. It's already on the way. Didn't want you to have to do all that." "You knew I was cooking?" I asked, not sharp, just present. She smiled. "Yeah, but I figured you'd rather not be bothered." I turned off the stove, placed the lid on the pot, and stepped back. No tears. Just a hollow space where the smell of stew used to mean home. That evening, after dinner, I asked Marlon if we could talk. We sat in the living room, the TV buzzing softly in the background. "I'm not a guest," I began. My voice didn't shake. "This kitchen knew my hands before yours held a spoon." He looked down at his lap. "We're just trying to balance things. Seraphine's managing a lot." Behind me, she chimed in from the hallway. "We're all adjusting. Don't take it personally." I nodded once. "I won't. But don't mistake quiet for agreement." Back at my place, I opened my journal. My sanctuary, my courtroom, my church. I fed them their first solid food, I wrote. Now I'm told what not to cook. I buried his father with prayers. Now I'm not invited to remember him. The ink bled a little where my pen lingered too long, but the words stayed clean. The next afternoon, I stopped by their house again, this time holding a folded sheet of paper, handwritten in pen. It was the recipe for that stew. The one Marlon once called magical, the one I never gave anyone else. I found Seraphine alone in the kitchen. She looked surprised but didn't speak. I handed her the paper. "If you ever try to replace me again," I said, "make sure the stew still tastes like home." She blinked. Her jaw tightened. "Because if it doesn't, they'll come looking for me, and by then, I might be gone. I no longer sign what I didn't write. And I no longer smile at people who erase me." The words came out of me at brunch, low and final, like a gavel striking polished wood. Marlon's hand froze midair over his coffee cup, and Seraphine blinked once, twice, then looked down at her phone like the moment hadn't just shifted the gravity of the table. But let me start 2 weeks earlier with a knock on my door. It was Saturday. I had just finished organizing my spice drawer. Not because it needed it, but because the ritual of aligning cumin beside paprika gave me a strange kind of peace. Marlon showed up with a manila folder under his arm, and that expression I'd learned to fear. The one that looked kind, but meant business. "Just some paperwork we'd like you to take a look at," he said as I let him in. "Year-end stuff. Makes things smoother going forward." I offered him tea, which he declined. I opened the folder while standing. Inside was a financial document, power of attorney. My name filled in at the top, Seraphine's name near the bottom, and boxes already checked. Neatly printed, efficient. I read each page, not once, 3 times. "You filled in the names," I finally said, voice steady. "You forgot to ask for the heart." Marlon shifted. "It's just practical, Mom. Nothing's changing right now. But down the line, it'll help us help you." I closed the folder gently and slid it back across the table. "You may run your home, Marlon, but not my future." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he said, "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No," I replied. "You already did that the moment you made a decision about me without me." 3 days later, I watched Seraphine accept credit for the Christmas basket I had personally assembled for our elderly neighbor. I saw her hand it over, with a smile that dripped syrup. "Oh, just spreading a little holiday warmth," she said. I stood on the porch behind them, unacknowledged. The neighbor looked at me, confused. I gave a small wave and stepped back inside. She can claim the gesture, but not the grace. That night, I wrote a letter to my bank, revoking any shared access permissions. I printed and signed it, hand-delivered it the next day. Then, I made an appointment with a notary to update my will. Quietly. Alone. Later that evening, I called Eunice. "They're not done," I said. "But I am." She asked nothing, just said, "I've got room in the back house, if you ever need it." "I'm not looking to run," I told her. "I'm just making sure I own the steps I take." At that Sunday brunch, with neighbors and friends around, Marlon brought it up again. Said they'd talked to a financial guy who suggested it was the cleanest way to avoid issues later. "Issues?" I asked, loud enough for the entire table to pause. Seraphine smiled, a tight press of glossed lips. "You know how things get messy when people don't plan ahead." I sipped my coffee, placed the cup down slowly, and looked around the room. "I no longer sign what I didn't write," I said, "and I no longer smile at people who erase me." Silence. Even the server refilling water paused. I folded my napkin, stood up, and left without another word. Then came the news. My name was no longer on my grandson's insurance form. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at home, folding laundry, when the pediatric clinic left a voicemail. It wasn't urgent, just routine paperwork. But something in the tone made me call back. "Mrs. Graves?" the receptionist asked. "Yes." "I just wanted to confirm a change. You're no longer listed as an emergency contact for Ethan. The system was updated last week." There was a pause before she added, "Your son came in personally." My hands didn't shake. Not then. But inside, something final shifted. They didn't just take my name off a form. They took me out of the safety net of my own bloodline. I thanked her politely and hung up. Then I stood there, in the middle of the room, wondering how many other things I'd been erased from that I hadn't discovered yet. That night, I tried to check something simple. Our old family Facebook group. It used to be full of recipe exchanges, last-minute carpool changes, and Sunday dinner plans. Now, it wouldn't even load. I tried again. Nothing. So I clicked into Seraphine's profile, and sure enough, there was a new group, smaller, private. Photos tagged our circle. I wasn't in it. I sent Marlon a message, just one line. Did I do something wrong? It was marked seen, no reply. In the world they built, I was neither friend nor family. Just inconvenience. I picked up the phone and called Eunice. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. I'm ready, I told her. Her voice came calm and steady. You taught them to be strong. Now show them how you use that strength. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I will, but I won't knock, I said. I'll bring the door down. The next day, I pulled out a small accordion folder and began slipping papers inside. Receipts, screenshots, notarized forms. I visited the courthouse quietly. The same clerk I'd spoken to last year helped me update my will. She didn't recognize me until I gave her my name. You look different, she said. I feel different, I replied. They wanted me silent. I gave them strategy. I made no announcements, no warnings, just action. The pre-holiday dinner came quickly. Marlon had sent a group text, addressed to Graves family. I wasn't listed by name. Still, I showed up. I wore the navy coat Charles bought me before he passed. The one Marlon used to say made me look like a senator. The dining room was lit, table full, laughter already in motion. I walked in like I belonged, because I did. No one stopped me. I sat down at the far end, by the sideboard, where no place card waited. When everyone had wine in their glasses, I stood. A few forks clinked awkwardly against plates. I'd like to propose a toast, I said. Marlon looked up, then looked away. Seraphine stayed perfectly still. To the families who still remember who protected them before they had homes to decorate. No one answered. I raised my glass slowly. And to the mothers who became invisible, not because they disappeared, but because they were covered up, one polished surface at a time. Seraphine rolled her eyes. I met her gaze and said evenly, Next year, I won't be at your table. But this year, I make sure you remember why. The echo of those words followed me home like a shadow that refused to loosen its grip. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, fully dressed, shoes still on, a manila folder in my lap. Inside was every quiet thing they thought I wouldn't notice, and everything I'd been building to say. 2 days before Christmas Eve, an envelope arrived. No card, no handwriting. Just a printed slip with a bar-coded access card and a short note from Marlon. Holiday entry pass, active 5:09 p.m. only. That was it. An hour later, a message from Seraphine. This just makes everything easier for everyone. Hope you understand. They gave me a timed entry, like I was a plumber, not a mother. Christmas Eve came with overcast skies and air heavy with things left unsaid. I arrived promptly at 5 Azores, scanned the card, heard the soft beep of the lock click open. I didn't knock. Inside, the house smelled of rosemary and roasted garlic. Seraphine's version of festive. The tree sparkled in the corner, tall and sterile, every ornament perfectly spaced. The music was light jazz, impersonal. I glanced around. The photo wall had changed again. New frames, new prints. Ones with coordinated outfits, holiday backdrops, nothing with me in it. My recipe box used to sit beside the stove, a little wooden thing with stained index cards. It was gone. A sleek stainless holder stood in its place. I smiled to myself and took my seat at the dining table. No one greeted me. When dinner began, I waited. Let them have their wine toasts, their performative blessings. And then I stood up. I brought something, I said, voice even. Eyes turned toward me. Marlin tensed. Seraphine tilted her head, curious. I held up the folder and opened it. In here, I began, are the documents you forgot to mention when you were making decisions about my life. I slid out the copies, each page labeled neatly. This is the forged financial draft you tried to push in November. This is the email from the clinic confirming I was removed from Ethan's emergency contact list. And this, I said, tapping the final page, is a printed record of the Facebook group where you erased me. Gasps murmured around the table. You tried to silence me, I said calmly, but I am not yours to silence. Marlin stood, pale. Mom, this isn't the time. No, this is exactly the time, I cut in. You chose this night to hand me a passcode instead of an invitation. Seraphine stared at me, lips pursed. What do you want from us? I looked around. Nothing. I placed the access card on the table. You won't be hearing from lawyers. I'm not suing you. I'm freeing myself from you. I turned to Marlin. You can keep the house, the photos, even the recipes you had boxed away. I looked back at Seraphine. Keep this too. You'll need it more than I do. To find your way back to decency. I walked to the door, not fast, not slow. No one followed. I didn't slam it. I didn't turn around. I simply stepped into the cold, into the street, into my own breath. They tried to manage my entry. I just exited their control. They tried to manage my entry. I just exited their control. A few days later, I stood by Eunice's window, watching the mail carrier place a thick envelope in her box. She brought it in, handed it to me without a word, and then sat across the room with her knitting. No questions, just presence. The envelope was from Marlin. No return address. Just my name, in handwriting I'd know anywhere. It had changed, gotten tighter, more compressed. I held it for hours before opening it again. Just one sheet inside. We need to talk. I realize now what was done. Regret is rarely handwritten, but this one was. We met at a corner table in a quiet coffee shop 2 mornings later. He'd already ordered me an herbal tea I didn't drink anymore. I didn't mention it. Marlin looked older, not aged, just worn. He didn't know where to put his hands, fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve. Mom, He paused, then started again. I don't know how to say all of it, but I know Seraphine and we crossed a line. I nodded slightly, but didn't rescue him with words. He kept going, voice breaking in parts. I thought I was protecting you, making things easier. I thought if we organized everything, we could avoid stress. But I see now it wasn't about protection. It was control. We took your space, your voice, your place, like it didn't matter. I stirred my tea slowly, then looked at him and said, You didn't lose me by accident, Marlin. You erased me on purpose. He swallowed. I watched his throat move, his face fold. I'm sorry, he said. I hear that, I replied, but I won't pretend it fixes everything. I didn't offer forgiveness. I offered the truth. Outside that cafe, people passed with gift bags and coats zipped to the chin, holiday cheer on autopilot. Inside, something heavier lingered between us. I stood up before he could. I hope you figure out how to be a father your son can admire, I said. Not because you kept the house standing, but because you remembered who built it. Word spread in the weeks that followed. I never told anyone what happened, but people knew. People always know. The woman across the street stopped waving at Seraphine. Her yoga group went silent online. She stepped down quietly from her lifestyle board. No announcements, just the sound of social distance, the kind that isn't 6 feet, but 6 layers deep. I moved into Eunice's back garage unit, turned it into my sanctuary, a cozy nook with a reading chair, a sewing table, and a window that caught the afternoon sun. I started volunteering at the family center twice a week, helped with paperwork, taught a small group for parents navigating estrangement. We called it Dignity in Distance. It didn't promise reunion. It promised clarity. I didn't reclaim a house. I reclaimed myself. New Year's Eve arrived with quiet wind. I walked down the block as neighbors laughed in their driveways. Kids ran with glow sticks. Couples kissed under string lights. No one knew my name, but they smiled anyway. One woman, holding a mug of cider, looked up and said, "Your grandson's lucky if he finds you again someday." I smiled back. "I'll be here," I said. "I just won't be waiting." I've learned that sometimes, the loudest silence is the one you choose for yourself. Walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When they no longer see your worth, it's not your job to make them remember. It's your job to never forget it yourself. I didn't need revenge. I needed peace. And peace, I found, not in their apology, but in my own clarity. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed out of your own story? What did you do when someone tried to silence your worth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved something in you, even just a little, type 1 below, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate, let me know why. I read every comment. If this video found its way into your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next story. We're building something honest here. Real stories, real people. Let's keep talking.